Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and Gamefound over the next week. If you're new here, we do this every single week going over all the upcoming campaigns, so if you want to see the date, this is the place to be. But before we get into it, I do like to go over some news and announcements that I just found out about over the past week. And the first one I have here for you is that they did just announce a dual version of Black Rose Wars. And of course this is being offered by Ludus Magnus Studio. And the original game was a competitive deck builder where players would be casting spells and summoning different types of monsters. And this one looks like it's going to be very similar to that, except more focused on that two-player experience. Spin-off two-player versions of games are normally a little bit more streamlined and a little bit easier to table, so if you were interested in the original, or if you're a fan of the original, and you're interested in something that might be a little bit easier to get out and play, this is definitely one to check out. But I also have another update for you, and I'm pretty excited about this one personally because this is a new version of Super Fantasy Brawl, and it's called Super Fantasy Brawl Reborn. This is going to be a complete re-implementation of the game. And if you are familiar with the original publisher of this game, it might be confusing as to how this even exists. And the reason for that is Mythic Games is no longer the owner of this IP. It looks like they sold it over to CMON, or at least gave them publishing rights. Mythic Games has been going through a bunch of trouble, and a lot of people are not a big fan of the company, and I totally understand why. But that being said, Super Fantasy Brawl is one of my favorite games, and I still do have it in my collection. It's just too big to be seen on the top of the shelf, so I have it at the bottom. And CMON always does an excellent job both streamlining games as well as creating a really nice premium experience. So I'm definitely interested in what this one has to offer, hopefully in a smaller box than the original because it has no business being that massive. In typical CMON fashion, they are also introducing a few other IPs into the mix as well, including the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and characters from Mortal Kombat 1. Not sure if there's going to be any others during the campaign, but I wouldn't be surprised. And it looks like this one's actually going to be a pre-order rather than your traditional campaign, and I think the difference between the two is that the pre-orders are normally a little bit further ahead when they launch, and you can expect your game to come in a lot more quickly. As always, I do like to give a quick mention to Alex over at Boardgame Co. because him and I do work together keeping track of all these upcoming campaigns. I do this every single week, but he puts up a video at the start of each month focusing on the heavy hitters for that month and giving you a bit of a sneak peek into the future. Of course, him and Meg do post a bunch of other content as well, and it looks like they even do have a video already going into what exactly Super Fantasy Brawl Reborn is. I'll be checking that one out after I'm done filming here, and if you want to check that out or any other content on his channel, I will have a link to it in the description below. And I do also want to give a quick mention to Zilla Blitz because Michael over at Zilla Blitz focuses more exclusively on the historical war games, which also just happens to be an area that both Alex and I don't dive into nearly as deeply as he does. So if you want even more game coverage and you're interested in that genre, I'll have a link to his channel in the description below as well. That's it for intro, and we still have quite a few games to cover. Not nearly as crazy as the past few weeks, but there's definitely some games that I'm interested in and I'll be following along with, so let's check them out. And the first campaign we have launches on October 28th, and this one's called Apophenia Horror Hunt, and this one is a cooperative survival horror puzzle and deduction game where players are going to be teaming up in order to hunt down different supernatural beings. The game offers 8 different monsters that players can go up against with different effects and abilities, and some of these can even corrupt or possess a player in order to bring them to their side and turn them against all the other players. Players will just be using the cards and a few components in order to explore the different scary locations in order to get the information that they need as well as the necessary tools to take the specific monster down. Not a whole lot more info on this one at the time of filming this video, but if you do want to check it out, I will have it linked down below. And this next one I thought was launching last week, but it looks like it got pushed back until the 29th, and this one's for Tikal Legend. So if you were looking forward to this one, it will be launching this week, and since I already did cover this one, if you're interested to learn how it plays and you didn't catch it in my last video, I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. And this one is a brand new 25th anniversary edition of the original game, and this one's going to be offering a brand new refined rule set, but it's also going to be providing the original rules as well, so you can play the original game with the brand new upgraded components. If you're not familiar with the original game, this is a game where players are sending out archaeologists in order to try and score the most victory points by discovering temples, ruins, and treasures. In the original game, on your turn, you need to be drawing a tile and then placing it adjacent to one one of the existing tiles out on the board. You'll then be able to spend 10 action points in order to add and move your archaeologists around on the board, build camps and temples, and then try to control those temples in order to score victory points. There are actions that allow you to increase the height of the temple, and that's going to be earning you more victory points if you are the one able to control that area. The neat thing here is that as you're drawing these tiles, there's also going to be randomly placed volcano tiles within that stack, and anytime that one of those gets drawn, that's going to be triggering scoring for each of the existing temples and sets of treasures that players have found so far. The game ends once all the tiles are placed, and then you're going to have a final round of scoring, and then the player with the most victory points wins the game. But as I said, this version does make a few changes to the rules, and they're going to be adding in a few new things. First of all, you'll be able to play as different characters that are going to be granting you with some special actions or abilities, but the biggest change here is that rather than drawing your tiles from a stack, each round starts with a drafting phase where players are going to be selecting the terrain tiles that they want, as well as action cards and turn order. This is really neat because if you do see a volcano tile there, you could actually choose to draft it so that you have control as to when that gets placed, which inherently gives you some control over the scoring. But the action cards are also a new addition to the game, and you're going to be drafting those and then using them later in order to supercharge your other actions. There's also some new tiles included that do offer some alternative options for victory points, and of course, as you've seen here, some really nice upgraded components. I'm sure there'll be a few other surprises as well, but there's not a whole lot of info at the time of me filming this, so if you do want to learn more about this one, you can check out the campaign, and I'll have that linked down below, and of course you can click to get notified once this one launches. And this next one is going to be offering you 4 different games from Allplay, but it is also a campaign that I thought was launching a couple weeks back, so I do already have footage for this one. But this one's going to be offering Ruins, Oddland, Vegas Strip, as well as Money. And if you do want to learn about any of those games, I'll just go ahead and roll my previous footage for you now. But you can find a link to the campaign in the description down below. And I'll just go through these in that same order. So the first one we have is Ruins, and this one is a card shedding game where the first person to get rid of all their cards is going to be the one to win the game. And something that is unique about this game, which maybe isn't such a surprise since this is designed by John D. Clare, is that this one does use card crafting, where you're going to be layering transparent cards over each other within a sleeve in order to upgrade and customize your cards. The game plays over a series of turns, where on your turn you're going to be able to upgrade one of your cards and then play that card. These upgrades can stack significantly, creating some very powerful cards. It also says here that you'll be able to claim one card the entire game, which I think means that you're going to have a limited amount of times that you'll be able to upgrade cards before you end up shedding them or getting rid of them, but there will be one card that you'll be able to continually upgrade and rely on and make a lot more powerful than any of the other cards that you might have in your hand. But the player that's able to get rid of all their cards first wins the game. Also offered in this campaign, we have Oddland, which is a competitive game where players are going to be documenting fantastical creatures on an island, and there's going to be a bunch of different creatures out on display, which is going to dictate the different ways that you can score victory points in this game, and these are all shared by all the different players. The way the game works is that each player has a hand of terrain cards that's going to feature 4 squares of different types of terrain. And on your turn, you'll be able to put one of those cards into play, either putting it adjacent to the existing tiles or even covering a portion of them. Once you've done that, you're going to be placing one of your tokens onto the card that you just played, trying to position it in order to score as much victory points as possible. These tokens are going to be scoring based on their surroundings, looking at the different terrain around them, or maybe what's in their row or column, or even where other tokens are positioned around them. At the end of your turn, you're going to be drawing a new map tile into your hand to replace the one that you just played. And then the game continues like this until each player has spent all of their tokens. And then at that point, you're going to be adding up all the victory points, and the player with the most wins the game. And the next game offered here is called Vegas Strip, and unfortunately I don't have a picture of the components for this one, but this one is a bluffing game where players are going to be taking turns playing money tokens out to different casinos out in the main play area, but players are not allowed to put more than 2 tiles on a single casino. Once all the tiles have been placed, they're then all going to be revealed, and then you're going to be going through each of the casinos, and whoever played the most amount of money at that casino actually loses all of their bet, whereas all the other players are going to be getting points equal to the amount that they put there. But the catch here is that some of the casinos are actually corrupt, and whoever plays the most at those casinos is going to be getting 10 points, whereas everyone else there is going to be getting nothing. Every player starts the game knowing where one of these corrupt casinos are, but you're going to have to try to deduce where you think the other ones are based on how many tokens the other players are putting there. The game also offers 20 unique casino power cards, which is going to add variety from game to game depending on which ones show up, but players will be able to take advantage of those and work them into their strategy in order to try and win the game. And the last game offered in this campaign is one that I do have more information on because this one is actually a refreshed Reiner Knizia game called Money. And this one is also a competitive game where there's going to be different amounts of money of different currencies, and players are going to be starting with some money plus a bluff card. At the start of the game, there's going to be 2 stacks of money randomly dealt, and then players are going to be simultaneously bidding for those stacks, playing their cards face down in front of them, and then simultaneously revealing. And this is where this game becomes really, really cool because the player that played the highest bid gets first dibs on exchanging their cards with any of the groups of cards out on the table. This means that they could exchange them for any of these 2 stacks that were put out on display, but they could also choose to trade them with any of the other players if those players happen to play cards that that player really, really wants. And this is why it's really nice to go first, because you're going to have a lot more options than the other players. But the round continues like this, going through each player in decreasing order of their bid, with each of them swapping their cards with any of the cards still out on the table. And what players are trying to do here is to collect money of the same currency, because you're going to be scoring each of the different currencies individually. In order to even get any points, you need to have at least $100 of that currency, and then any amount of dollars after that 100 you'll be able to score as victory points at the end of the game, unless you're able to get over $200 in a currency, and in that case you get points from all your cards. If you're able to get 3 of a kind, which means 3 cards of the same value and of the same currency, that's also going to grant you a bonus. And then there are also some coin cards that are just worth a flat 10 points for each one that you're able to collect. But the game continues like this until that main deck runs out, and then the player with the most points at that point in the game wins the game. And if you do want to check these out, I will have them linked in the description down below. And the next campaign we have launches on October 29th, and this one's called All Hoomanz Are Dead. And this one takes place in a lab where humans were creating both artificial AI as well as super enhanced animals. The problem is the AI went rogue and only the animals are left in order to protect the rest of the world from this rogue AI. This is a cooperative dungeon crawler style game where players are going to be playing as those bioengineered animals, and players are going to be working together to try and locate and blow up particular rooms in the lab in order to take the AI down. Of course, the AI is not going to make that easy, and as players are trying to do all this, the AI will be leveling up, causing different effects out on the board, and deploying all sorts of drones in order to try and take those players out. And I do want to thank the publisher for this one because they were kind enough to send me a prototype version of the game. So rather than just telling you how this game plays, I can go ahead and show you. And I have this all set up for a 2-player game, and I have my 2 characters here. I have Diana the Hunter as well as Luke the Soldier. Each character is going to have some starting resources as well as some upgrade tiles, and players will be drafting some items at the beginning of the game. Players will be starting out on the medbay token, and this is also the area where you'll respawn if you do end up taking too much damage. But we also have a whole stack of different location tiles over here that I did have to break into 4 different stacks and then shuffle in particular tiles. Other than that, we have this resource board in the top left corner here that's going to be holding resources both for the players as well as the AI. And we have these energy tokens that you'll be able to spend on your turn for additional energy, these defense cubes to keep track of your current defense value, and then there's the drone yard where the AI is going to be taking from in order to send those drones out onto the different tiles. The way that the AI normally does that is through an assembly line where you're going to be adding these tokens onto this assembly line on the bottom of the AI board, and then once certain tiles are revealed, those are going to be deployed out on those tiles. This board also keeps track of the current level of the AI, and we have this little token in order to keep track of that. And every time that we reveal an AI brain room, this token is going to move up and then trigger whatever effect is in that level. And then if the token ever gets to the end here, then it has become fully upgraded and the players collectively lose the game. Over here we have our 3 different types of cards. We have our monster deck where you're going to be revealing different monsters that you'll be able to fight anytime that you reveal a room that has that icon. And then over here we have our item cards, which like I said, you do draft at the beginning of the game, but you can also find more throughout the game as well. And then we have these mystery event cards cards, which can cause some different effects, and they can be good or bad or potentially even do nothing at all. And I'll just take us over here to one of the character cards where you'll be keeping track of their current level on the left here, as well as any implant cards that you install to further upgrade your character. Then there's also slots for item cards that you can put in the bottom here, but in order to put a item card there, it does have to match that icon. And then on the right here, this is just a track so that you can easily keep track of your current strength, which is going to be your base strength plus any strength from your various items. At the start of the game, you can go ahead and equip any of those cards that you drafted, and I do have a few here that I can't equip. I'll just move that out of the way for a second. I have the shotgun, which gives me an additional 3 strength, and I have the pellet gun, which gives me an additional 1 strength, and then I do have an implant card which I can throw over here, and you are allowed to add your implant cards at the start of the game, but after this point moving forward you do need to find a specific room in the lab in order to install those. This is a really nice implant because anytime that I reveal one of these mystery cards, it actually allows me to draw 2 of them and then pick the one that I want to resolve, and like I said, those can be good or bad, so having that extra little bit of option there does allow me to mitigate that draw. But now let's go ahead and set this to the appropriate strength. So we have 4 here plus the 3, so that's going to give us 7. And I've just went ahead and done the exact same thing with Luke here, but you might notice with his item cards he also has a couple defense values, and whenever you have defense values at the start of the game, you can actually choose whether you want to take the attack power or if you want to permanently add that amount of defense cubes to that character. Just to make things interesting, I'm going to choose to take the defense approach, so that means that his attack power is going to remain at a 3 here, but then we get to go ahead and grab those additional defense cubes and add them permanently to his board. But after players have set up their boards, you're just going to be jumping straight into the game and taking turns performing 2 actions. You can perform basic actions that any character can perform, but then there are also bonus or advanced actions that players can gain through different upgrades or through different items that they might acquire throughout the game. Another neat thing about this game is that there is also the possibility of crafting, and you'll be trading in different cards and items in order to craft other items, and this is a free action to do as long as it's your turn and as long as you have the items that you need to perform that crafting action. Each action may also have an additional requirement as to when you can perform it, and that is also stated on this board here, but you might have also noticed that some of these crafting actions actually require a monster card. And this is really neat because the monster cards do become a resource when you do defeat that monster. Not only for this crafting, but also in order to level up your character, because each of these levels is going to have a cost in monster cards that you're going to have to discard in order to unlock that next level and gain these really nice extra upgrades. The main basic actions that players are going to be performing is the movement and explore action, and these are very similar to each other. They just work a little bit differently. You can just spend an action point to move into an already adjacent room, but in the case where there is no room in the space that you want to move into, you're going to be drawing a new tile from the stack and then putting it next to the location where you intend to move to, connecting it so that the hallways connect to where you're currently located, and then you have to immediately move into that room no matter what you see on that tile. And in this case, I'm not particularly upset about that because this tile allows me to draw 2 item cards into my hand. So I'll just go ahead and do that, and that is one of my 2 actions. Anytime that you resolve the effect of these different icons that you'll be finding, you're just going to be throwing a clear token on this to indicate that that has already been done. And if another player moves into this, there isn't going to be any effect. But now I'll just continue with another explore action and add this tile onto the board. And this one doesn't have a whole lot going on in it, except for the fact that it does have some dynamite located in the corners of the room. And what that means is that when you do blow up a room in this game, if it is also connected to any of these tiles that also have explosives in them, then this is going to have a cascading effect and blow up any connected rooms that have those icons. This is also something that can be good or bad depending on how you've prepared for it, because this is going to be destroying any drones that are in those rooms, but it's also going to be killing any players. And that's the end of my turn, and then we move into the next player's turn. So Diana's going to get 2 actions, and she's going to perform an explore action by revealing the tile upward. And she didn't get quite as lucky as me because she's going to have to fight 2 monsters, but like I said, when you reveal a tile, you do have to move into it, so she doesn't have a choice. and that's going to cause her to draw 2 monster cards. And combat in this game happens immediately when you reveal those cards, but the first thing that you're going to do is check the initiative value of your initiative and the 2 monsters, and higher initiative is better. So this is nice that I do go first, but also at the start of battle, if your initiative value is higher than the monster's initiative, you do also have the option to retreat, and I could just go ahead and do that, going back to the location that I came from. But when you do that, you do not add a clear token there because you have not yet cleared that room. In this particular case, I would definitely be taking that action because I don't think there's any way that I can currently defeat these 2 monsters when they have such high attack and defense values. But just for the sake of showing you what combat actually looks like in this game, let's go ahead and reveal a different combat card. This guy still does have a lower initiative than me, so I could choose to withdraw if I wanted, and he does have quite a high attack value if he does manage to hit me. But because I do go first and he has a defensive 5, and my current combat power is at a 7, I can defeat this guy in a single hit. The only catch here is that when the combat is resolved, he does cause me to discard a blade card, but since I don't have any of those, that's not going to have any effect on me. Since I was able to defeat the monster in a single hit, I have won the battle and combat comes to an end, and I'll just be taking that into my supply. But because I did dish out 4 points of damage to defeat that enemy, this is actually going to reduce the amount of combat power that I have for the rest of the round. And one key thing to note here is that if you are either on the same space or adjacent to a space as one of your fellow players, they can actually help you in the battle. So I think I'm going to try and stay close to my partner here, and what I want to do is move into this space. So I'm going to perform another explore action and draw a tile and throw it onto the space here. I'll explain what this does in a second here, but first I want to point out that this space does have locked doors on it. So normally I can't move through those doors, but because I have this special action card, that's going to allow me to do so. So I'll spend that in order to move through that locked door, which is going to be bringing me to this space. And before I forget, since I defeated the enemy there, this would go ahead and get a clear token. But Diana is just having no luck here because whenever you reveal this room, your turn is going to end immediately. And then also you're going to be leveling up the AI by pushing this token upward, which is going to also cause a few other things to happen, which does include removing all of the clear tokens that are currently out on the board. So that means that this is available again to be claimed, and also these monsters have returned. This is also going to cause any of the drones currently in the assembly line to be placed out on the board, and these can only be placed in these squares that have the yellow border. So this is my only option, so they're both going to go there. And this might look a little scary for Diana, but lucky for her, these drones can't deal any damage yet, but that is a possibility a bit later once the AI does level up enough. And I should also mention that this is just one of the ways that these drones can make their way onto the board, and another way is if the assembly line is completely full. But now that all the players have had a turn, we're going to be moving into the AI's turn, and the way that this works is that you're just going to be activating each of the AI upgrades from bottom to top until you get to the row that has the upgrade token. So since the AI is just upgraded, we're going to be activating these 2 bottom rows. The first one wants us to add another drone token into the assembly line. And then this next upgrade is going to cause 2 of these drones to move up to 3 spaces to try and reach the outer edge of the board. And if they're able to do that, they're going to be revealing another tile into that space. Since these are both on the edge already, we can just go ahead and reveal the first tile, which will go up here. Now we're going to activate the next one, and we always move towards the closest edge, which means that this next drone is going to be moving in this opposite direction. And the drone revealed a green bordered tile, which is actually good for us because there are 4 of these in the game, and we have to destroy 3 of them in order to defeat the AI. But the drone's going to go ahead and move into there. And another thing to note about these green bordered rooms is that each of them also does have a special ability when it isn't completely blown up. And that's the end of the AI's turn, and we're just going to be going back into the players' turns, and just like at the start of the game, they're going to be able to add their combat power back onto their gauge here, so we can go ahead and reset that. And I think we'll go ahead and give Luke some attack power this round as well. But once again, we're just going to be taking turns performing 2 actions, and for Luke, I'm actually going to move into this room to get those 2 items, and then I'm going to move upward to be in the same room as my partner here. And that's the end of my turn, and now we move into Diana's. But the reason that I wanted to get into the same room as her is because at the start of Diana's turn, she can freely trade any cards with me. And the reason that she wants to do that is because she will be able to craft a short fuse bomb if she's able to get 4 of each of these different item cards. Lucky for her, she already has 2 of those, and I had 2. In order to craft that, she does have to be in this room here, so she's going to use 1 action point in order to move into that room with those cards, which she's then going to discard in order to craft this bomb. If you're crafting a normal bomb, it would be getting 3 defense tokens from your own supply in order to indicate its fuse, with 1 being removed at the start of each player's turn until the last one's removed and it explodes. But since we did a short fuse bomb, it's only going to be getting 1 of those added. And you probably wouldn't want to be doing this early in the game because it is costly to give up all those cards when we could just craft a normal bomb. But I did want to show you what happens when a bomb blows up. And for the final action here, Diana's just going to be moving out of that room back into safety. But now it's the AI's turn again, so they're just going to be going through those same motions as before, adding a drone token to the assembly line, and then also causing 2 of the drones out on the board to move 3 spaces towards the nearest edge in order to reveal a tile. And drones are able to move through locked doors, so this drone I'm going to have move upwards and reveal the tile there. And then that gives this drone the ability to move 1, 2, 3 into this location, which I was hoping for some explosives so we could see a little bit more action here. And like I said, at the start of each player's turn, you're going to be removing one of these fuse cubes, and now it's the start of Luke's turn, so we're going to remove that, which causes this to explode. And when you do that, you're going to be flipping the tile to its backside, but then any adjacent tiles that also have explosives in them are also going to be flipping over. And lucky for us, this does get this drone out of play. These tiles are going to remain here, which represent the exploded rooms, but only the drones are able to move through those rooms. And the game continues like this until either the AI wins or if the players win by destroying 3 of those rooms. But before we wrap up here, I do just want to show you a couple more aspects of this game, because since Diana does have a monster card, she can go ahead and trade this in order to issue herself one of her upgrades. And when you do that, you're just going to be choosing any of the 4 upgrade tiles that you want to use in the game. And maybe I'll go ahead and give her this multi-shot ability, which allows her to deal damage to all enemies at once when she is facing 2 or more enemies. And the last thing I want to show you is when you move into one of these locations with the blue question mark, that's going to cause you to draw an event card. But since Diana also has the upgrade that allows her to draw 2 and choose 1, we get to go ahead and do that. And this event card does nothing, whereas this one allows her to take a discarded implant and equip it immediately. That's a really nice card, but unfortunately for us, we don't have any discarded implants at this time. There's also other tiles that have turrets on them, and they're going to be dealing you instant damage as soon as you move into them. And there is also a special helipad tile, and once you discover that tile, this gives you another way to destroy those different rooms, because the cards you collect can also have a helicopter icon, and if you want to discard 4 of those, you can actually call in an airstrike and just instantly destroy a room. So those are really powerful to try and collect. But I hope that gives you a good idea of how the game plays. I think this is a really fun one, and it offers a very different experience from most other dungeon crawler type games that I've played. And if you are interested to learn more about this one or go ahead and back it, I will have it linked in the description down below. And also launching on October 29th, we have Sweetlands, and this one is a competitive tile placement city builder where players are going to be building out their city from the capital, building different roads in order to activate the abilities of the tiles that you place. And players are going to be using a shared worker placement mechanism in order to put these tiles and roads and buildings into play, but then to also move up various tracks in order to unlock new abilities, create a bit of an engine in order to generate resources, and also to determine how you score at the end of the game, because there are a bunch of different ways you can gain victory points in this game. You'll want to move up the various tracks in order to increase the amount of victory points that you get from all those different areas. And I'm super excited about this one because it is coming from the designer that created my favorite set collection game of all time, which is Aqua Garden, and I have it in my collection and I'm never getting rid of it. But he's also created a ton of other games, including Ostia, which is another one that I do have on order. And across all these games, there's always been quite a lot of attention to detail with the aesthetic as well as the production of the various components, with really nice screen printed meeples, beautiful artwork and color grading, and it's all done without sacrificing interesting and intuitive graphical design. So I think it's pretty obvious that this is one that I'm really excited about, so it's no surprise that this one is also my own personal pick of the week, both for all the reasons I just said, but also because I do have some hands-on experience with this one, and I really like what I'm seeing with it so far, because the publisher was kind enough to send me a prototype. As always with prototypes, there are some things that will be improved in the final version, but as I'm seeing this right now, it looks like a complete game, and I think it looks amazing. There were some components that weren't provided to me as part of the prototype, so there will be some improvements there as well. And this one is quite a bit bigger than most of the prototypes that I've shown on the channel, so I do have this set up as a 2-player game right now, but both of these boards do belong to me, and the other player would have a similar setup with their boards, although there is variability between the different characters, and there is also boards that do offer asymmetrical layouts. And this is a game that does have quite a lot going on in it. There's a lot of ways to gain victory points. There's a lot of different actions that you can do, and they all work together in different ways. But I think this is also a game that's very intuitive once you've gone through the rules or played it once. And I haven't had this very long at all, but I'm fairly confident that this is a game that would be pretty easy to get back to the table, even if you haven't played it for quite some time, which I think is really impressive for what this game is offering. But I'll start with the main board up here, and you can see that there's actually 3 different tokens for each player that you'll be moving up the victory point track at the top of the board here. And this isn't one of those games where your points are going to be equal to the lowest one. Instead, there is your victory points. The other points can convert into victory points at the end of the game, but they're also used for other actions, and you might need a certain amount of those other points in order to get various benefits. All these tracks below the main point tracker are your prosperity tracks, and these are really important because each one of them is going to be correlating to a different way that you can gain victory points, and the more that you're able to move up these various tracks, the more victory points you'll get from that particular source. Not only that, but you'll also gain the benefit of anything that you move over or across, so there are lots of good reasons why you want to be moving up these different tracks. All these spaces in the center here are your different action locations, and when you take actions in this game, you actually just take an action token from the shared supply. You're going to be putting it out on the appropriate space that you want to take the action of. These will usually require you to pay some sort of cost, which is on the left in red, in order to gain some sort of benefit on the right. Another interesting aspect of these locations is that you'll also have to discard an amount of citizen cards equal to the number of spaces you are from the left of that action. So if I were to place this token here, that would cost me 1 citizen card, but if I were to place it over here, it would cost me 2 citizen cards. So these aren't necessarily blocking, but they can be more costly if you are later to take that action. You might have noticed down here that we have a round tracker, and every round this is going to be moving forward, and once it reaches a certain column of actions, those actions are going to be flipped over, adding even more actions to choose from as the game goes on. If we move even further to the right here, you can see there's a bunch of free actions that players can take, and these are mostly related to converting resources into other resources or converting those resources into additional actions. Underneath the free actions are all sorts of different skill tokens that players can gain, and the way that you gain those is through other actions and uncovering different icons that allow you to take them. And then all the way on the right here, we have this separate board that I just have sideways here because of my limited space, but I put out a bunch of randomized tokens here based on player count, so if you have more players, this will be more full. But this is an area where players are going to be drafting different columns at the start of each round in order to get the benefit of the tiles in that column. I've already emulated that with these 2 tokens here, so at the start of the first round, I would be gaining a diamond as well as an iron, whereas my opponent would be moving up any of those prosperity tracks that I pointed out earlier, and they would also be gaining 9 coins. And now if we take a look at my own personal player board here, you're going to see that there is a bunch of different tracks, and this top one is the industry track, and it moves and loops around like this. And you're going to have both a locomotive and a carriage, and at the start of the game you can only move your carriage forward until it reaches this space with a locomotive, and then you'll be able to use your locomotive as well. And anytime that you move these forward, you're going to be gaining the benefit of any of the spaces that you pass over that also match the color of that token. You might have also noticed these cute little milk buildings and these buildings here that I've flipped over just so you can see it from the camera. And we do have a building at the bottom of the board as well, and then a special building over here. You're going to be placing these buildings out on any of your completed tiles on your main city board, and whenever you do that, you're going to be gaining the benefit of the building, but also the benefit of the location that you put it on. The one exception is this special ice cream clock tower token, and this one has specific requirements beside it that's going to indicate when you can place that, and it is a free action to do. And when you do that, you're going to be getting an ongoing powerful ability for the rest of the game. I should also mention that your locomotive and carriage are not able to move past any space that's blocked by a building, so you will want to build those in order to open up the rest of that track. Underneath your industry track is your food track that you'll be able to move forward on in order to gain the benefit of any of the spaces that you pass over. But as you move past these various bunnies, you're going to be unlocking those, allowing you to place those out on your city as well. And when you place a bunny, you want to place it in a location that already has a building on it. And that's going to gain you the benefit of whatever is under the bunny that you just placed. And it's also going to be gaining you some victory points at the end of the game. These tracks on the left here is where you're going to be building up a bit of an engine in order to generate more resources each round, because as you move up these different tracks, you're going to be getting that amount of resources at the start of the round. When you do that, you're going to be taking these resource cubes, which each represent a different amount, and then you'll just be putting it in that corresponding track, indicating that you now have that amount to spend of that particular resource. And we have gold, wheat, wood, and iron. There is also one more special resource, which I mentioned before, which is your diamond resource. And these ones work a little bit differently, and they don't have a track, and instead you're just going to be putting them off to the side. But these ones have more particular applications, and there'll be specific actions that might require them in order to take that action or to upgrade that action into something more powerful. And they are also worth victory points at the end of the game. And I'll just point out this little coffee grinder token because it's not something that you're going to be actively using throughout the game. Instead, it's just a cute way to keep track of who the first player is. There is also some interesting actions that you can take at the bottom of your board, but I'll come back to that in a minute. But first, I just want to mention that there is a bunch of different characters that you can play as with different abilities and different boards that incentivize different approaches throughout the game. And what's cool about these is that you can just flip this double-layered board open in order to put your character card in there. And these are all double-sided with different cards on each side, giving you a lot of different options when you want to play this game. The city boards are also double-sided, offering both a unique side as well as a side where all players have the same city board, so depending on how you want to play it, you do have those options. But you can see how there's all these different terrain types, and you're going to be using your actions to gain tokens of those different types. And when you place those out on your board, they just have to be put on the same terrain type, but also either adjacent to another tile that you already placed or adjacent to the city capitals. And I have 2 of those city capitals at the bottom of my board here, so this would be a legal placement. And then if I were able to place another tile, I could take this water terrain and put it up here because it's now adjacent to that one. And when you place these tiles out, they do go face down at first, and you're not allowed to build buildings on them until you flip them up. And the way that you do that is by building the roads. And when you build a road, it has to go on the spaces between the city tiles. And the roads do also have to start from a city capital, but you can continue however you like beyond that, even splitting it out into different directions. But once you have a road along an edge of any of your tiles, you'll then be able to flip that over and you'll get the immediate benefit of that. And like I said, if I built a building on that later, I would get the benefit of that building, but it would also reactivate the benefit of that tile. All these different icons across the board are there to incentivize you to try and reach those locations, because that's going to be granting you the associated bonus action. And there is also some locations around the perimeter of the board that will increase the amount of cards that you get to gain at the start of each round, which is really nice. And in order to unlock that, you do have to build a city tile and a road beside that location. But like I said, this is a game that plays over 5 rounds, and at the start of each round, each player is going to be gaining the benefit they chosen on this board, and then gaining the resources according to their resource tracks, and then also drawing up a hand of cards. But after that, players just take turns performing one action on their turn. They can either use an action space, use one of their citizen cards, or use one of their skill tokens if they do have one in their possession, or instead they can choose to pass, which is going to end their turns for the round. So you do want to be doing that once you feel ready to do it, and it is also going to trigger your scoring. I've already explained all the actions out on the action board where you can gain or convert resources, gain more cards, place terrain tiles, place road tokens, place property tokens, which are your buildings, move up the various tracks, or place those bunny tokens. But when you choose to play a card instead of using an action space, each card is going to have a cost associated with it, and then it's going to give you an instant benefit. But then each card also has different icons that you can try to collect for set collection and points at the end of the game. But the really cool thing is the action at the bottom here, and in order to get that action, it does cost a diamond. But this is going to have a corresponding space and color indicated beside it. So if I paid to activate this card and then I also paid the diamond to place this underneath my board, I would just go ahead and slide it like so that you can see the icons and the ability at the bottom here. And anytime that I'm able to trigger an action that has this effect, which you can see out on the board here in different locations, I can choose to activate this column, which will then gain me the benefits of each of the cards in that column. A really cool thing here is that if you're able to get other cards that also share that color, then you can also pay to add those to your board. And this is going to be creating a combo effect where you'll be able to activate multiple cards at once when you do take that corresponding action. But if you're not interested in using an action space or a card, you can instead flip one of your skill tokens that has this flip icon on it. And whenever you do that, you're just going to be flipping it over and then gaining the benefit on that token. I should mention that there is only 3 different tokens that have that flip ability, and each of the other tokens are going to be triggering on different effects in the game. Once you've done all the actions you can or want to do, you can then choose to pass, and once all the players pass, it's going to be ending the round. But before you do pass, you do also want to consider if there's any free actions you might want to perform, especially if there are any milestone objective cards that you're able to complete, because it is free to complete any of those cards. I don't have them pictured here because I don't have any of them with my prototype copy, but at the start of the game there's going to be a few different milestone cards that are looking for certain requirements in order for you to gain them, and they're going to be granting you with different benefits and victory points, and as soon as you meet those requirements you can just take that milestone as a free action. The game continues like this for 5 rounds, and then at the end of the game, players are going to be tallying up their victory points by taking the victory points that they've earned so far, but then adding any additional victory points they've earned from the prosperity tracks, from the different buildings that they've built, as well as 2 victory points from each city point that they earned, and then additional victory points from your resources and those diamonds and any of these ports that you're able to access. The player with the most victory points after all that wins the game, and if you do want to check this one out, you can find it linked down below, and of course you can click to get notified. And also launching on the 29th, we have a couple new expansions for Dice Throne Adventures, and this is going to be the Dice Throne Outcasts and Adventures Unchained expansion. This is going to be adding 4 new heroes, as well as new loot, minions, and bosses for players to go up against, as well as a new mode of play that allows you to play through one-shot scenarios. If you're not familiar with Dice Throne Adventures or how that plays, this is a campaign that I did cover back when it originally launched, so I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. And you're going to be able to choose a hero from a variety of heroes that each have their own asymmetrical hero board and leaflet, which outlines their abilities and their ultimate attacks. And for each character, players will also get a health tracker, a combat points tracker, a deck of cards, and 5 dice. And on a player's turn, they'll draw 1 card from their deck, and then they'll also gain 1 combat point. And combat points are kind of like a currency that allow you to play certain cards throughout the game. And the active player can play as many actions as they want in any order, and there's 3 actions that a player can perform. The first one is to discard any of their cards in order to gain some combat points, or they can pay the cost to play a hero upgrade card that they currently have in their hand. And the way that those work is that each upgrade is going to match an ability on your player board, and if you pay the cost for that upgrade, then you're going to replace that ability on your player board by putting your new card on top of it. So these upgrades will augment the abilities that you already have. And the third action is that you can play any amount of action cards, and to do that you just pay the cost and then perform the action. And then you're going to roll your 5 dice, and you can re-roll any amount of your dice up to 2 times. And then you can play any one of your offensive abilities. But each of these abilities also have requirements, and in order to play any of these abilities, you would have had to roll the appropriate dice in order to fulfill that requirement. So this might mean that you need certain icons or a certain sequence of numbers. If you're just playing a 2-player game, then you're just simply attacking your opponent player, but if there's any more than 2 players, then you're going to roll a die to determine your target. Some dice rolls dictate the player that you have to attack, while other dice rolls might give the option up to the players. This different colored ability in the bottom right is actually your defense ability, and if you're ever attacked, you can try and defend against that attack. Although some attacks can't be defended against, and you're also going to have to roll your dice in order to fulfill the requirements of that ability. Once you've completed your attack, you can perform any of those 3 actions I mentioned before as much as you like once again, and this is going to allow you to brace yourself for the next player's turn. Also on the 29th, we have Animalcatraz, which is a game that can be played competitively on teams or as a free-for-all, and in this game, players are competing to either become kingpin of the prison or to escape the prison completely. This is a campaign that I thought was launching a few weeks back, so I did already record footage for this one. So I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now, but you can go ahead and find the campaign in the description below. This one is a competitive game where players are playing as different convicts, and you can win the game in one of 2 ways. You can either be the first to gain enough reputation points to become the kingpin, or instead you can be the first to gather the necessary tools and equipment in order to successfully complete your escape plan. Players will be playing as different characters with different stats like strength, which you're going to be using to attack, or cunning, which you're going to be using for theft, corruption, and escaping or recruiting gangsters. The game plays over 5 rounds, and you have 5 actions per round. The players are going to be navigating through the night and day as the guards are going to be moving around the board according to dice rolls. Players are going to be using their actions to move around on the board, manage the contraband which they can carry along with them or stash in their cell, or engage in different interactions to corrupt the guards or recruit gangsters, or even trade in the black market. This is another one that I didn't get a chance to look into too deeply, so if it does sound interesting to you, definitely check it out, and I know that there are some other content creators that have covered this one, and you can go ahead and check out their videos, and I'm sure there'll be a few of them posted on the campaign page as well, but if you're looking for that, you can find a link to it in the description down below. Also launching on October 29th, we have the next campaign from Ivy Studios, and this one is called Tend, and in this game, players are competing to build a thriving colony on an alien planet. Players will be cultivating the land and growing different crops and livestock, while also visiting the nearby forests, mines, and lakes in order to fish and gather various resources. Players will be reinvesting those resources into their various tools and equipment in order to make their actions even more efficient as the game goes on, and you'll be earning victory points in a few different ways by completing different badges and also completing your cargo manifest. The game plays over 12 rounds, with each round consisting of 3 different seasons, and at the start of each round you're going to be populating this board with various cards. The top row represents different objectives that you can complete for each of the seasons within that round, so you can only complete the objective of the current season, but you will be able to see further into the future. The cards below that are going to be swapped out every season, and these represent the actions that are going to be available to you. Players are going to be simultaneously choosing 2 of those cards in the display that they want to activate, normally granting them with some amount of resources of a particular type. And something to know about this game is that there is no storage of your resources, and if you don't spend them, you're going to lose them, so you want to spend them as soon as you get them. But the resources can be used for a bunch of different things. You could just simply sell them for an income, or you could use them to complete various objectives, or load them into your cargo in order to complete your manifest. Completing an entire row in your manifest is going to grant you with the bonus action corresponding with that row, but each space that you do fill in is also worth a victory point, and each column can actually act as a multiplier for certain types of resources that you put into that column. This is going to be outlined at the bottom of your manifest, and this is going to be different from sheet to sheet, which does add a little bit of variety each time you play the game, and does incentivize players to play a little bit differently. Resources can also be spent on various locations on your sheet in order to make different upgrades, which will make your actions even stronger and more efficient, which usually allows you to perform that action multiple times when you do choose to take that action. But another really interesting way that you can use your resources in this game is just by giving them away to one of your neighbors. And yes, this is a competitive game, but each player is going to have 2 neighbor cards, one on each side of them, and this is going to outline a particular resource that you're allowed to give to that neighbor. If you do that, it's going to be moving you up the social track, which is going to be granting you with whichever reward you're able to cross off. But I should be more specific with how the different action cards actually grant you those resources, because they don't just give you them directly. Instead, they're going to allow you to go out and find them. The first action is to tend, which actually allows you to choose from a whole subset of actions out on your board, but these can allow you to expand your farm by cultivating or building fences, and this allows you to make space for different crops and livestock that you can just go ahead and buy. And these are going to be represented by dice, and you'll be putting those in the spaces that you've expanded to in order to put that livestock or crop into your farm, which is going to be giving you ongoing resources every single round. The chop and mine actions work very similar to each other, but this is a really interesting aspect of the game because this is going to allow you to explore either the woods or the mines, and each one of those is actually going to be represented by different scratch-off cards. You'll be able to explore these areas from the path outlined on the card, and then you'll just be expanding out trying to find the different resources that might be hidden beneath those. Both the mine and the woods are also divided into two sections, with the top section requiring just one action point in order to scratch those spaces, but the bottom section requires 2 action points, but normally does grant you with better and more resources. The fishing action can be a little bit more risky because when you perform that action, you're going to be rolling 2 dice, and those are going to be giving you coordinates that you're going to be checking on your fishing chart to see if you caught a fish. The cool thing about this is that you can also upgrade your rod, which allows you to expand the area of coverage that your fishing rod can target around those coordinates, and better rods can also allow you to catch more fish. But I think my favorite aspect of the fishing is that you can actually find different fishing locations, which will grant you with new fishing charts, and one of them is just on your sheet, and in order to get to that location, you just have to build a bridge in order to get there. But the other 2 fishing locations are actually going to be located somewhere within your scratch-off cards, and you're going to have to find them first before you're going to be able to fish there. There's also different objectives that you can invest resources in order to try and complete, and once you have those, some of the action cards will actually have bonus actions associated with them, and if you have completed those particular badges and milestones, then you'll be able to perform those bonus actions as well. But the game continues like this over the 12 rounds, and the player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game. And I did also mean to mention that this one is both our Discord pick of the week, and it is also my pick of the week as well, because I am super interested in this one. I'll be following along with it and definitely adding this one to the collection. If you're interested in it, I will have it linked in the description down below. Also on the 29th, we have a new edition of Barony, I think. I'm probably saying that wrong, but this is the Royal Edition. It's going to be featuring some upgraded art and components. And it's also going to include the Sorcery expansion and all new asymmetrical player powers. If you're not familiar with the original game, this is a strategy game where you're going to be setting up the board by randomly placing tiles, and then some of these tiles are going to be starting with players' cities out on them. The game then plays over a series of turns where on your turn you can just perform one action, and you can use that action to either add knights to one of your cities, move 2 knights into adjacent locations, and when you do that, if you move into a location that just has one of your opponent's knights, then you're going to be eliminating it from the board. But if you do that same thing to one of your opponent's towns, then you're going to be taking the token of that town, because the final action you can perform is to actually convert any of your knights into a town or bastion, and when you do that, you're going to be gaining a token based on the terrain that you built it on, and that's going to be worth victory points at the end of the game. But you can also collect those tokens, which you can then trade in to build either additional cities or to increase your title on the title track. Increasing your title moves you more to the right on that track, while building additional cities is going to be moving you further to the bottom of that track. Both of those do gain you more victory points, with the most victory points being earned in the bottom right section of that track. The player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game, and if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. Also on the 29th, we have Clandestine, and this one is a competitive game where each player is going to have a different character with asymmetric abilities and different starting resources and tokens, and you're also going to get cards matching their color, with these cards coming in different levels. You'll be able to upgrade your character throughout the game to unlock those higher level cards and to also increase your hand limits. The game also includes a shared market as well as some shared trackers, which I will come back to in a second here, but the main board is going to be made up of a bunch of of different pieces that interconnect like a puzzle, and each player is going to have a section that matches their color on one edge of the overall loop. There's also going to be both player pawns and neutral pawns out on these various boards, and they do come in different types, but the player pawns have to stay in their area on their side of the board, whereas the neutral pawns can move all around the perimeter and even be brought into a player's side of the board, which represents them becoming a follower of your society. As players play throughout the game, you're going to be acquiring these different alchemy tokens that you'll be unlocking, and at the start of your turn, you'll be resetting all of those tokens so that you can reuse them. And these tokens are nice because they allow you to convert resources or cards between each other, and they can also allow you to regroup or unlock additional workers. But the main action you take on your turn is going to be out on this main board, which does follow a Mancala system. You'll be able to activate any space that currently has either a public leader or your own personal leader in that space, and the strength of the action of that space is going to be equal to the number of pawns there. Once you take the action of the location, you're then going to be picking up all the pawns at that location and then redistributing them one at a time down the different paths. And the cool thing here is that you can send them down different paths, and some pawns do have limitations onto the paths that they're allowed to follow, but you do have the goal of trying to get as many of those neutral followers into your section of the board. The reason for this is that it does earn you more victory points, and it does also make your actions stronger. And the different actions that you can perform is to gain resources, gain cards which will grant you with different bonuses, suits, and icons, and those can be used for different objective cards to gain different benefits. But you can also perform actions to upgrade your character by paying the coins and cards required, and also you can use actions for additional movements for pawns that may have been outside of the pawns that you actually used to perform the action. As I mentioned, the more pawns in an area, the more powerful that action is, which is going to modify how much extra you get from that action when you do take it. When you do upgrade your character, you're going to be discarding cards of a single suit, and that's going to determine which column you're allowed to take ascension tokens from. You'll gain the benefit of whichever one you choose, but then all the other players are going to get the benefit of that column. Some actions you take can also generate chaos, which is going to limit your alchemy, and it's going to start to cover up various actions out on your board. But the game ends once a player has fully ascended or when the relic deck is depleted, and you're going to be gaining points from your level as well as the sets of relic cards and objectives that you completed, the pawns on your board at the end of the game, and then you're going to be losing victory points for accumulated chaos. The player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game, and if you want to check this one out, I will have it linked below. Also on the 29th, we have a new expansion for the game Flock Together, and this is the Birds of a Feather expansion. And this one's going to be adding more heroes that you can play as well as more predators, but it's also going to be adding more weather conditions into the game, as well as expanding the player count to 6 players, and just adding a bunch more content into the game. But this is a game that I did cover back when it originally launched, so if you're not familiar with the original game, I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. And I really love the theme in this one because in this game, players are going to be playing as chickens, working together cooperatively to try and fight off different predators over 3 different rounds, and if you're able to defeat the final boss, then the players win the game. But a really cool feature about this game is the way that your character actually works, because each player is going to be starting the game as a baby chick, and you're actually going to be using this booklet and growing your chick and gaining new abilities throughout the game, and you're going to be turning the pages as you level up. But it doesn't stop there, because the same can be said for the predators as well. And like I said, you're going to be fighting a different predator each and every round. But I should actually say that a new predator is going to be introduced every single round. So if you're not able to defeat the predator in the round that it appeared, then it's going to be coming back in the following rounds as a stronger form, because that predator is also going to be growing as well. Each round does also represent a change in season, so you're also going to be facing different events and different weather events that might limit your movement or the actions that you can take. And this is an action selection game because on your turn you'll be able to perform 2 out of 8 possible actions. Some of these actions will occur on the farm itself, while some of them do have you venturing off. You could use an action to go off the farm to forage for food, which you can then bring back to heal other players or heal yourself, or you could use an action to lay eggs, which you can use to revive other players. And you can also use actions to move, draw ability cards, level up your chicken, or even attack the predators. And you could attack either one of the active predators, and if you are able to defeat them, you do get a nice loot drop with an item that will grant you some special effects. Or instead, you could go and attack some of the critters that you might find around the farm. Combat is resolved quickly just using dice rolling, and if you are able to defeat any of the smaller creatures, you do get a small benefit for that, but there is always a chance for a negative effect depending on what you roll. The game continues like this over 3 seasons, and if players are able to defeat all the predators, and then also take out that final boss, then they win the game. And if you are interested in this one, you can check it out. I have it linked in the description below. And also on the 29th, we have Trick or Bid, as well as a few other trick-taking games. But this game is a game that plays over several rounds where you're going to be dealing 13 cards to each player, and then each round the lead player is going to play a card. Players are all going to be trying to follow the same suit to play the highest card, because if you are the player that does that, then you can choose whether you want to claim the trick, or if you want to use one of your opponent's cards in that trick to make a bet that you're going to win that amount of tricks. The catch here is if you go over, you have busted and you're going to get no points for that round. And the game does also offer cards of the same suit and value, and if 2 of those are played in the same trick, then they cancel each other out, which is a really fun way to force another player to win if you want to try and push them over their bets. Player with the most points at the end of the game wins the game, and you can find this one in the description down below. And also on the 29th, we have a campaign that I didn't get a chance to look into too deeply, but this one is called Trench Crusade, and this one is a skirmish war game that's set in an alternate timeline where players are going to be fighting heaven versus hell. Looks like this one has some really nice artwork, but there's not a whole lot on the campaign page right now, so if this one looks interesting to you, feel free to go ahead and check it out once it launches, because I'm sure there'll be a lot more content here at that point, and you can find a link to the campaign in the description below, and of course click to get notified. Also launching on the 29th, we have Shallow Sea, and this one is a competitive tile placement pattern building game where on your turn you're going to be drafting from a set of different tiles and fish. And the way this works is that every time you draft, you're going to be taking a fish and a tile. And depending on the fish that you choose, you can either take the tile above it, which is going to be some type of sea life, or you could take the tile below it, which is going to be some type of coral. Whatever you choose, you're then going to be putting on your own personal ocean board, and each fish is going to be creating a different scoring objective that's going to require either different patterns of fish or coral, and each coral is going to want to be surrounded with fish of its matching color. If you're able to do that, then you're going to be flipping that coral to its other side, which allows it to become a home for a fish, and you get to choose which fish you want to inhabit that coral, which is going to be allowing you to complete various objectives. There's all sorts of different objective cards that you can try to complete in order to earn more victory points, and seashells can also be acquired throughout the game, which you can see at the top of the board here, and those can be spent in order to move fish around on your board in order to create new combos and patterns to earn you even more victory points. Once there's just 4 spaces left on each of the players' boards, that's going to be triggering the end of the game, and then the player with the highest victory points at the end wins the game, and you can find this one linked in the description down below. And also launching on the 30th, we have the Royal Hospital, and I do remember covering this one in the past, so it must have got pulled down and delayed until now, so I do already have footage for this one. So rather than going over this over again, I will just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. And this is an engine building game where each player is going to be managing their own hospital, trying to be the most successful in order to prove themselves as the most ideal candidate to run the Royal Hospital, which is the most prestigious and impressive hospital in the entire world. And in this game, players are going to be managing a hand of cards, and these cards are going to allow you to do a variety of different actions, but players will also be managing money as well as several resources in the different categories of science, diagnostics, healing, doctors, and staff. And at the start of each game, players are going to get one of each resource as well as some money and a starting ability, and then players are going to draft a hand of cards. And then the game is going to play over a series of rounds, taking turns between each player, and on your turn you're going to gain a card as well as a patient. And there's going to be 2 different types of patients in the game. There's the critical and the non-critical patients, and the difference between them is that the critical ones, their condition is known, and you only have 1 round in order to try and treat them. Whereas the non-critical patients will allow more time to try and treat them, but you first have to diagnose them before you know exactly what their ailment is. And on your turn, you can also sell as many cards as you like, gaining 3 coins for each card. And then you can perform an action, and your action can be either to play one of your cards, play an ability, which will allow you to move up one of the insurance tracks in the top right hand of the board, gaining any of the bonuses listed along the way. Or instead, you can spend resources to purchase another card from the shared market, or if there's nothing you wish to do, you can always pass. And playing a card in this game plays very similar to the way playing cards works in Terraforming Mars, where you're going to have to pay a cost in order to put it into your tableau, and that might be a cost in money or resources or both. And then some of the cards might have some instant benefits, where others might have actions that you can do each round, and players will be looking out for different cards that they can chain together and create different combos. Some of these cards can also improve your production of different resources at the start of each round, and others might allow you to move your ambulance token around the circular portion of the board. And whenever you do this, you're going to gain a resource for any of the spaces that you cross over. And some of the cards can allow you to gain victory points in different ways. It can either increase your prestige, which allows you to gain victory points every single round, or they can allow you to gain objective cards, which will allow you to gain endgame victory points if you're able to complete that objective, or some of the cards might just grant you victory points instantly. And there's quite a lot of different cards, and they could grant you just one of these benefits or combine multiple of them together in a single card. The player who's earned the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game. And that's it for this week, but don't leave yet because we still got an awesome giveaway to announce, and this is going to be for a pledge for the Galen's Games Mint Tin series, and this is going to get you all 4 of the games. And to enter this giveaway, all you have to do is leave a comment down below. This one's going to be offered worldwide, so you can enter no matter where you're at. And I personally think that these games look like a lot of fun. If you're wondering which ones I am most interested in, I would say probably Dice Clash as well as Verdant, Arizona. But these games all play very different from each other. Dice Clash, you're going to be rolling dice and assigning them to cards to take different actions back and forth in order to try and inflict 2 points of damage on your opponent. Monster Mashup, you're going to be drawing different cards and then piecing them together to create your monster and then fight them against your opponent's monster. Heritage Farms is more of a strategy style game where you're trying to move your farmer and your boats across the river in order to bring different types of resources to your farms. But the resources are chickens, foxes, and corn. And if you have those 3 different types of cubes at your farm and you leave it, then nature is going to take its course, and the fox is going to eat the chicken, and the chicken is going to eat the corn. Except not in that order. And then Verdant, Arizona looks like my favorite of the bunch, where you're going to be moving a little truck around a market of cards, and then wherever you stop that truck, you'll be able to take one of the cards adjacent to it and add it into your tableau. And then you're trying to create rows and columns of either increasing or decreasing values, but there are also some different icons and ways you can get additional victory points if you do position your cards properly. Of course, there's a bunch more to each of these games, and I did cover them in more detail during the week of their launch, so I do have footage for that if you want to check it out. But like I said, this is for the complete collection, so if you're interested in winning yourself some really cool games here, all you gotta do is leave a comment down below, and you can say anything that you want. But we are coming up to Halloween here, so maybe you could let us know if you're planning to dress up for Halloween and what you're planning to dress up as, or if you're not planning to dress up but you have kids or nieces or nephews that have a really cool costume idea, definitely feel free to share that in the comment section below. Good luck in the giveaway, but now let's go ahead and draw the winners from last week. And we had giveaways for StarDriven Gateway, which was run over on the Discord. And if you are watching this soon enough, there might still be time to enter, and you can find a link to the Discord in the description below, and all you gotta do is click that emoji there. But the other giveaways we had was for Ministry of the Lost Things, Ultimate Voyage, as well as the complete so-called Living Collection. To draw a winner, I use this application here, and all these extra names down here are bonus entries for my subscribers over on Ko-fi who make all of this possible, so thank you so much. And if you're interested in supporting the channel, I do have a link to that down below. But we're going to draw for Ministry of the Lost Things and Ultimate Voyage first, and I'm going to go ahead and draw 2 winners here, so whoever the first one is gets Ministry of the Lost Things, and whoever is drawn second gets the Ultimate Voyage. So let's draw those comments and draw the winners. And the winners are Tabletop Toby from the YouTube comments, so just feel free to reach out to me at adam@shelfclutter.com and we'll get that pledge sorted out. And then we have Southstar from the Ko-fi subscriber list, so congrats on the win. Feel free to also email me, but I will reach out to you if I do not hear from you. And now let's go ahead and draw for So-Called Living, and I wanted to do this separate because I did want to draw this one exclusively from the comments, just because I know comic books aren't for everyone on the channel since this is a board game channel, and I want to make sure that this is going to someone who specifically entered in for this giveaway by putting in the appropriate comment. So let's add in that hashtag and redraw those comments and draw the winner. And the winner of So-Called Living is Jeff P765, and I'm not sure if I can decipher this one, but it looks like a good time. Just email me at adam@shelfclutter.com and we'll get that pledge sorted out for you. And that is everything I have for you this week. Not such a crazy amount of games this week, but between Sweetlands and Tend, there is definitely a couple games that I will be backing. Hopefully there's a couple there that you found interesting as well. And I do also want to mention that I haven't been as on top of my comments as I normally am. Just been crazy busy lately. I do always read them when they show up on my phone. I just don't normally respond to them on my phone. I like to do that on the computer. I just haven't really been doing that, and I do feel bad about it, but I do want you to know that I do read them all, and a lot of them give me a really good chuckle. I do appreciate them a lot, and hopefully I can get back into my usual routine once things slow down a bit, both with the channel as well as my personal life, because I've been trying to get a ton of renovations done on this house before winter hits, because doing renovations in the winter is not fun, and I've removed a lot of insulation and I am starting to feel it. My brother's also getting married tomorrow, so there's lots of exciting things keeping me busy as well. But I'm not going to slow down on these videos, and I will also post a couple extra ones letting you know of different campaigns that I decided to back. And I'll try to get that out within the next month is the best promise I can give. But until then, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.